In this lesson, we're going to focus on really understanding the instantaneous rate of change as an overview, just looking at the graph as that slope at a point. So I should have brought it up, and I could find it here, calculus tangent line. But basically, whatever your graph of your function is, let this red line represent the slope of the tangent line, right? And you can see on this function, it's always changing. And look at the top, it's a horizontal line. And there it becomes negative, and then it starts to become positive, and there it actually is positive. So that slope is always changing. So if you were to try to graph like the slope right here, going through a point, a tangent line on this one, you'll notice it's a negative slope. So what about the slope right here at the very bottom? If I were to draw a slope on the very bottom right here, going through this point on the parabola, you'll see the slope is 0. So we're trying to focus on the slope. So what would the slope be of this point? And we're just going to estimate it. And I think it's a multiple choice. I think the slope would be somewhere about right here. Oops. Wait, give me a second. Let me just move it over to the point. I wanted to make it parallel first. All right, move it right there. So that's more or less what the slope would be at that point. So we would try to find like the rise over the run of this. So it's like going up 1, 2. So here's a point right there and right there. So it's going up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, 2. So it seems to have about a slope of 2 for this red line. So that's the idea. We're trying to estimate it. Like I said, there's going to be a multiple choice selection here. So you're going to kind of estimate it, and it's going to be values that are pretty far away from each other. So it's pretty obvious on those. Like here's an example where the multiple choice is given. So right here at this point, well, you could tell it's on the bottom, so it would actually be a horizontal line going through it. So this slope would be 0. Don't know why I jumped right there, but it did. So that slope is 0. So just to, be careful with this assignment, but you're more or less just estimating the slopes. The hardest question would be right here where they're going to have us compare f of -4 and f of -1. So is f of -4 greater or less than f of -1? You got to be careful with this. So you can see right here would be a steeper slope than if I were to draw this line. Let me put that one in green. And this one would be actually a flatter slope. Let's put this in purple. So because this slope is negative, let's just say it was like -3, and this one was like -1/2. Which one would actually be greater? The -1/2 would be greater, wouldn't it? So -3 would be less than -1/2. Because we're dealing with negative numbers, -3 would fall to the left of -1/2 on the number line. So we've got to be careful with that whenever it deals with the negatives. So we're going to actually go with less than. F of -3 would be less than f of -1 as far as the number line goes. Or f of -4 would be less than f of -1. Because this one, even though it's steeper, if it was positive, the steeper one would be the greater one. But because it's negative, it's actually the steeper one is going to be the lesser one, because -3 would be less than -1/2. Once again, just because that number line, I want to redraw that number line because it was kind of ugly before. So -3 on the number line would be to the left of -1/2. So this would actually be the lesser slope, the steeper one for the negatives, but the steeper one in the positive direction would be the greater slope.